Do you think you know the story of Mowgli? Then answer yourself one question. Do you actually remember how Rudyard Kipling's story really ends? Most people immediately pictured the beloved animated movie about a boy raised by wolves, the wise Baloo, the graceful Bagheera, and the cunning tiger Shere Khan. But there is the problem. That's not the story Kipling wrote. The real Mowgli is far darker, harsher, and all times genuinely shocking. The characters don't spend their time singing songs and stumbling into light-hearted adventures. Here characters die. Here the law is absolute, and breaking it can cost you your life. Here friends are willing to die for one another, and betrayal never goes unpunished. And perhaps the biggest surprise is this: the central conflict of the book isn't between Mowgli and Shere Khan at all. It's the story of a human being who spends his entire life trying to answer one question: who am I really? The wolves see him as a man, humans see him as a wild animal, and Mowgli slowly realizes that he never truly belongs in either world. That's why this is not simply a children's story about the jungle. It's a powerful story about growing up, loneliness, loyalty, revenge, and the search for one's place in the world. What's more, many of the characters people remember as kind-hearted or unimportant turn out to be very different in the original book. And some of the most brutal episodes are rarely mentioned today whenever people talk about Mowgli. Why did the wolf pack agree to accept a human child in the first place? Why did Shere Khan decide to hunt him from the very beginning? Why do the Bandar-log monkeys become one of the Mowgli's greatest dangers? And how does a young boy manage to defeat the most feared predator in the jungle? Today we are going to break down the real story of Rudyard Kipling's Mowgli, following the book exactly as it was written, without adding anything and without mixing it together with the movies or animated adaptations. Well, follow Mowgli's entire journey from the very night a helpless little child crawled into the wolf's cave to the ending that many people have never actually read. If you enjoy deep dives into classic literature, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Welcome to Rubber Books. Let's get started! When most people hear the name Mowgli, they imagine a single book. But that's actually the first misconception. Rudyard Kipling never wrote a standalone book called Mowgli. The story of the Jungle Boy is told through a series of separate stories published in two collections: The Jungle Book and The Second Jungle Book. Only later did publishers gather all of Mowgli's stories into a single volume that is now commonly known around the world simply as Mowgli. By the time he wrote these stories, Kipling was already one of the most famous English writers of his era. He was born in Bombay, British India, and spent the first years of his life surrounded by India's wildlife, languages, and local legends. Although he later spent much of his childhood in England, his memories of India stayed with him forever and became the foundation for many of his greatest works. It's important to understand, however, that Kipling's jungle is not a realistic description of India. It's a fictional world with its own laws, traditions, and rules. The animals speak, they gather at the council rock to make important decisions. They live according to the ancient law of the jungle, and they are held accountable for their actions almost if they were human. At the same time, Kipling constantly reminds the reader that this world is anything but a fairy tale. In the jungle, no one gets a second chance simply because they are a good person. A single mistake can cost a life. Everyone knows their place, respects the law, and accepts responsibility for the consequences of their choices. The law of the jungle itself becomes one of the book's central characters. Baloo, Akela, Bagheera, and the other animals refer to it again and again. It is much more than a list of rules. For Kipling, the law represents order. The only thing preventing the strong from destroying the weak and the jungle from descending into chaos. That is why Baloo teaches Mowgli so harshly. He's not trying to make him strong for strength's sake. He is teaching him that survival depends on respecting the rules that hold everyone together. Ironically, many modern readers think of Mowgli as a children's story about friendship between a boy and wild animals. But that is not the book Kipling wrote. His stories are filled with death, hunting, exile, revenge, struggles for power, and difficult choices between duty and emotion. Almost every major character eventually faces a test where one wrong decision could cost not only their own life but the lives of the others as well. After its publication, the Jungle Book quickly became an international success. It was translated into dozens of languages, and Mowgli soon became one of the most recognizable literary characters in the world. Later came stage productions, feature films, animated movies, and countless adaptations, but almost every adaptation changed the original story. Some removed its darkest episodes, others softened the personalities of the characters, and some completely rewrote the ending of major events. That's why so many people honestly believe they know Mowgli's story, when in reality they know only one of interpretation of it. The real Kipling is far less forgiving. His jungle is not about entertainment. It's a world where freedom cannot exist without discipline, where respect must be earned, and where every choice has consequences. And it's into this world that one day a human child appears, a child who, by every law of nature, should never have survived. But one unexpected night will change not only the fate of that little boy, but the destiny of the entire wolf pack. Why the wolves accepted a human cub? Mowgli's story doesn't begin with the boy himself. It begins with the Shere Khan's hunt. That evening, the lame tiger goes hunting near a human village. Instead of pursuing his usual prey, he decides to attack people, even though the law of the jungle forbids hunting humans without a good reason. From the very beginning, Kipling reveals one of the Shere Khan's defining traits, that he constantly breaks the law whenever it benefits him. The other animals don't despise him because he's a tiger. They despise him because he lives by his own rules. But the hunt doesn't go as planned. The terrified villagers scatter, and a small child becomes separated from his parents in the darkness. While they flee for their lives, the little boy accidentally wanders straight to the wolf's cave. This is where one of the most famous scenes in an entire book takes place. Father Wolf is just about to leave for his nightly hunt when he notices a tiny human child standing at the entrance to the cave. The boy doesn't cry, scream, or try to run away. Instead, he looks at the wolves with curiosity. Kipling emphasizes that the child shows absolutely no fear. That's why that's what first impresses the wolves. Mother Wolf comes closer, carefully studies the unexpected visitor, and suddenly makes a decision that will change everything. What a little one, completely naked, but how brave. When Shere Khan arrives at the cave demanding that the child be handed over, Mother Wolf responds with astonishing determination. She doesn't simply refuse, she openly challenges one of the most dangerous predators in the jungle. She declares that the man cub belongs to her now and that one day he will be the very one who brings about Shere Khan's death. This is more than a mother's instinct. Mother Wolf understands perfectly well that she is breaking the natural order of things. She is taking a creature of another species into her family and is prepared to defend him with her own life. But her decision alone isn't enough. According to the law of the jungle, every cub must be presented before the pack council. It is the pack that decides whether the cub has the right to remain among the wolves. Sometime later, a Kela, the wise and experienced leader of the pack, calls the council. The wolves carefully examine the human child. Many are uncertain. No one has ever raised a human as one of their own. At that moment, Shere Khan intervenes. He demands that the pack hand the boy over to him. But the law of the jungle says that if there is a dispute over a cub, two members of the pack, other than the parents, may speak on the cub's behalf. The first to do is Baloo. Many people remember him as a cheerful bear from the movies, but Kipling's Baloo is very different. He is the strict teacher of the law of the jungle. He rarely speaks without reason, so when he does, everyone listens. Baloo declares that he is willing to teach the man cub the law and accepts responsibility for his education. But one supporter is still not enough. Then Bagheera steps forward. The Black Panthera reminds the wolves of an ancient rule. A cub's life may be bought. She tells them that she has just killed a fat bull, Norby, and offers it to the pack in exchange for the boy's life. The law allows such a bargain. For a hungry pack, the choice is obvious. They accept Bagheera's offer, and just like that, the human child officially becomes a member of the wolf pack. It is then that he receives the name Mowgli, meaning the frog, because he has no fur. But in reality, the council does not end in victory. Shere Khan leaves humiliated by the pack's refusal, but he does not abandon his goal. He openly declares that one day the man cub will still end up in his claws. From that moment on, a feud begins that will follow Mowgli through nearly all of his childhood. He is still far too young to understand what has happened. But the adults already know one thing: as long as Shere Khan is alive, the man cub will never truly be safe. Mowgli's childhood, Baloo, Bagheera, and the law of the jungle. After the pack cancel decision, Mowgli's life changes completely. He officially becomes a member of the wolf pack and grows up alongside mother wolf cubs. To him, the jungle is not a strange place, it's a home. He runs with the wolves, learns to track prey, climb trees, swim rivers, and quickly begins to understand the language of every creature in the jungle. But Kipling immediately makes one thing clear: being loved by the wolves does not mean Mowgli grows up without rules. Quite the opposite. His childhood is one long education. His greatest teacher is a Baloo. Most people know him as a fun-loving lazy bear, but in the book he's nothing like that. He's the only teacher of the law of the jungle. It's his responsibility to educate the young wolves, and Mowgli, in the rules that make survival possible. He makes the boy memorize the ancient laws by heart. He teaches him to respect other animals' territories, explains when hunting is allowed and when it's forbidden, and teaches him with a master of words that earned the friendship and help of snakes, birds, and other creatures. As Kipling writes, the law of the jungle never orders anything without the reason. That idea runs through the entire book. The law does not exist to limit freedom. It exists to keep the jungle from descending into chaos. Learning is not easy for Mowgli. He is still an ordinary boy. He can be stubborn, easily distracted, and sometimes lazy. When he makes mistakes, Baloo even strikes him on the head with his paw. Today, many readers would consider that far too harsh, but to Balu, it's not cruelty, it's part of the lesson. He knows that one careless mistake could one day cost Mowgli his life. Bagheera teaches him very differently. Where Baloo relies on discipline, Bagheera explains, advises, and protects. She knows human better than other animals. She herself was born in the cages of Princess Managiri before escaping into the jungle. Because of that, she understands something Mowgli himself cannot yet see. She constantly reminds him, "Remember, little brother, you are a man." "I'm a man." Spell it M-A-N. I'm a man. To young Mowgli, those words mean almost nothing. He believes he is wolf. He runs faster than many animals, understands the language of birds, knows every scent of the jungle, and feels completely at home among its creatures. But Bagheera knows that one day his human nature will make itself known. For now, however, seems almost unstoppable. He learns patience and observation from Kaa. He receives news from Cheel, the kite, who sees everything from above the jungle. He learns about the water truce during the great drought, when even deadly enemies are forbidden to attack one another at the river. Little by little, the entire jungle comes to know the man cub. But as respect grows, so does the danger. Shere Khan never forgets his promise. He knows that as long as a killer remains strong and pack follows the law of the jungle, Mowgli cannot be touched. So the tiger chooses a different strategy. He slowly begins turning the younger wolves against the killer. He waits for the old leader to grow weak. He knows that one day the pack may stop respecting its leader. And when a killer falls, Mowgli protection will fall with him. While the boy happily grows up among his friends, Shere Khan is already setting in motion the events that will change the fate of the entire wolfpack forever. And Mowgli has no idea that his first true test will not come from the tiger at all. It will come from above, from those whom nearly every creature in the jungle despises. Mowgli's kidnapping, the Bandar-log, and the battle at the Cold Layers. The monkeys become Mowgli's first truly deadly threat. And here Kipling immediately reveals an important truth about the jungle. Almost every animal fears Shere Khan, but they all despise the Bandar-log. The reason isn't their strength, quite the opposite. They are considered the most dangerous tribe in the jungle because they recognize no rules. They have no law of the jungle, no leader, no memory, no responsibility. Today they swear one thing, tomorrow they do the exact opposite. They chatter endlessly, imitate other animals, and constantly convince themselves that they are the wisest creatures in the jungle. Baloo speaks of them with open contempt. He forbids Mowgli from even talking to the monkeys. He explains that the Bandar-logs have no language of their own, no honor, and no laws. They steal other people's words, other people's ideas, and never take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. But Mowgli is still just a child. One day, after Baloo punishes him harshly for disobeying, the boy runs away in anger. That is when the monkeys surround him. They begin flattering him. They tell him that only they truly understand Mowgli. They promise to make him their king. They insist that the wolves, Baloo, Bagheera, are simply jealous of him. To a child, these words sound tempting, but Kipling shows just how dangerous flattery can be. While Mowgli listens to the beautiful promises, the monkey suddenly sees him and carries him high into the treetops. And so begins one of the most suspenseful adventures in the entire book. Baloo and Bagheera realize what has happened too late. They immediately give chase, but the monkeys race through the treetops far faster than anyone can follow. Almost no creature in the jungle is capable of catching them. Fortunately, Mowgli keeps his head, and he's been carried away. He spots Chill the kite flying overhead and manages to call out, "Follow me! Tell Baloo and Bagheera where they've taken me." That small detail later saves his life. Chill delivers the message and finds Mowgli's friends. But Baloo and Bagheera quickly realize an unpleasant truth. They cannot do this alone. So they turn to the one creature whom nearly every animal both respects and fears, Kaa. The movies often portray him as a funny, deceitful, or even the main villain. But Kipling's Kaa is the exact opposite. He's gigantic, ancient python, one of the wisest and most dangerous creatures in the jungle. Even the Bandar-log fear him. The moment the monkeys hear his name, all their confidence disappears. Meanwhile, Mowgli is taken to the cold layers, the crumbling ruins of ancient city once built by humans. Now the monkeys rule there. They race through broken places, shout meaningless speeches, pretend to be kings and rulers, and constantly congratulate one another on their imaginary achievements. But in reality, they create nothing and finish nothing. Kipling deliberately contrasts them with the law of the jungle. While every other creature lives by clear rules, the Bandar-log exists in complete chaos. That's why no one in the jungle truly takes them seriously. But for Mowgli, their madness becomes deadly. The monkeys have no idea what to do with their prisoner. One moment they admire him, the next day they forget about him, then they begin tormenting him for their own amusement. Any random impulse could end with his death. When Baloo, Bagheera, and Kaa finally reach the cold layers, one of the book's greatest battles begins. Bagheera is the first to charge into the swarm of monkeys. Baloo, despite his age and heavy body, fights his way toward Mowgli with incredible determination. But there are simply too many monkeys. Only Kaa's arrival completely changes the battle. His mere presence is enough to throw the Bandar-log into panic. Then Kaa unleashes his ancient power, his hypnotic dance. Under its spell, the monkeys lose all will of their own and become completely helpless. For the Bandar-log, it ends in total defeat. Mowgli is rescued, but after everything he has experienced, he learns one of the most important lessons of his life. In the jungle, the most dangerous enemy is not always the strongest one. Sometimes the greatest danger comes from those who live without law, without memory, and without responsibility. And before long, Mowgli will face an even greater trial. For the first time in his life, he will stand against Shere Khan, the enemy who has waited for this moment since the day Mowgli was born. Shere Khan versus Mowgli: How a Man Defeated the Most Feared Predator in the Jungle. The years pass and Mowgli grows into a strong, agile, and confident young man. He knows the law of the jungle as well as any wolf, speaks the language of the animals, and has earned the respect of nearly every creature in the forest. But his greatest enemy has been growing alongside him. Shere Khan has never forgotten his promise. All these years he has patiently waited for the right moment. The tiger understands that as long as a killer remains the leader and the pack continues to follow the law of the jungle, reaching Mowgli will be nearly impossible. So he doesn't rely on stress, he relies on cunning. Little by little, Shere Khan begins turning the younger wolves against the killer. He convinces them that the old leader has become too weak to rule. He promises them an easy life without strict rules and slowly tears the unity of the pack apart from within. At last, the day the tiger has waited for finally arrives. During the hunt, Akela misses his prey. Under the law of the jungle, a leader who fails to bring down his quarry loses the right to lead the pack. The old wolf suddenly finds himself standing alone before those he protected for so many years. He no longer hides his intentions, Shere Khan. He demands only one thing: hand Mowgli over to me. Many of the younger wolves are already prepared to support the tiger. That is when Bagheera reminds Mowgli one of the words she has repeated to him since childhood: "You are a man." She tells him to go to the human village and bring back the one thing every creature in the jungle fears: the red flower. That's what the animals call fire. Mowgli goes to the village, returns carrying a pot filled with glowing coals, and walks back into council. Until that moment, Shere Khan believes he has already won. But everything changes. Mowgli raises the red flower above his head, and the entire pack recoils in terror. Even Shere Khan, the most feared predator in the jungle, is terrified of fire. For the first time, the tiger is weaker than the boy he has hunted for so many years. Mowgli does not kill Shere Khan, he humiliates him. Waving a burning branch, he drives the tiger away before the eyes of the entire pack. Then he turns to the wolves. He tells them that he always thought of them as his brother. But now he finally understands the truth. To the animals, he will always be a man. He leaves the pack of his own free will. It becomes one of the most heartbreaking moments in the book. Mowgli has not been defeated. On the contrary, he has saved Akela and forced Shere Khan to retreat. Yet at the same time, he realizes one and for all that he no longer belongs in the world of wolves. For the first time in his life, he must go and live among humans. But the reader quickly discovers that no one is waiting for him there either. Mowgli leaves the jungle not as a triumphant hero who has found his place. He lives as a man who has lost the only home he has ever known. And an even greater test still lies ahead. He's about to discover that living among people can sometimes be far more dangerous than living among the fiercest predators of the jungle. Humans versus Mowgli. Why the village branded him a sorcerer. When Mowgli enters the world of humans for the first time, he finds himself among the people he belongs to by birth. But a world he doesn't understand at all. You would think that this is where he would finally feel like he belongs. But Kipling quickly shows the opposite. The jungle accepted a human child. Human society, however, welcomes him with suspicion. The villagers notice a strange young man who barely speaks their language, walks barefoot, fears no wild animals, and behaves nothing like everyone else. At first, they bring him before the village headman. Gradually, Mowgli begins learning human speech, clothing, and village customs. A woman named Mesua takes him into her home. She is convinced that he is the son she lost years ago. The child she believes was carried away by a tiger. Mowgli doesn't argue with her. He treats Mesua with kindness and gratitude, even though he knows he is not the son she lost. At first, it seems as though his life is finally falling into place. Mowgli is given the job of herding the village cattle. For any other boy, it would be an ordinary task, but Mowgli sees the world very differently. He still speaks freely with the wolves, receives news from the jungle, and continues living between two completely different worlds. And that is exactly what begins to frighten the villagers. Mowgli isn't like everyone else. He knows far too much about animals. He isn't afraid of the forest. He says things that no ordinary person could possibly know. Little by little, people begin whispering that someone like him cannot be normal. The most suspicious of all is the village hunter Balder. He loves telling unbelievable stories about spirits, werewolves, and demons of the jungle, passing off his fantasies as fact. Mowgli, who knows the jungle better than anyone, openly laughs at the tales and easily exposes Baldeo's lies. For Baldeo, it's a personal humiliation. He cannot allow some boy to make him look like a fool in front of the entire village. Slowly, fear turns into hatred. From that point on, every strange event is blamed on Mowgli. If the animals behave oddly, it's Mowgli's fault. If something unusual happens in the jungle, it's Mowgli's fault. More and more people begin calling him a sorcerer. Meanwhile, Shere Khan enters Mowgli's life once again. This time, the tiger is certain he will finally kill his old enemy. But Mowgli has been preparing for this meeting for years. Together with Grey Brother, one of the wolves from his own family, he devises a plan. They split a large herd of buffalo into two groups. Then Mowgli drives the herd straight toward Shere Khan, forcing the tiger into a narrow ravine with no escape. The massive stampede crushes the predator. That is how Shere Khan dies. Not in a fair one-on-one fight, not by blind luck. Mowgli wins through courage, his understanding of animal behavior, and his ability to outthink his enemy. Afterward, he skins the tiger himself. When the villagers hear that Shere Khan is dead, they should have welcomed Mowgli as a hero. Instead, the exact opposite happens. Baldo tries to claim the victory for himself. When that fails, he declares that Mowgli is a sorcerer who controls wolves and wild beasts through dark magic. Stu, the frightened crowd, believes him almost immediately. Stones are thrown at Mowgli. He's driven out of the village. Mesua and her husband become victims of the villagers' fear as well, simply because they defended him. Here Kipling delivers one of the book's bitterest truths. Mowgli succeeded in defeating the most feared predator in the jungle, but overcoming human prejudice proves far harder than defeating a tiger. This disillusioned with humanity, Mowgli returns the only place that had ever truly felt like home, back to the jungle. But an even greater war still lies ahead, one of that will threaten not only his own life, but the future of the entire wolf pack. The final war, the Red Dogs and the most brutal battle in the book. After Shere Khan's death, it might seem that the greatest danger is finally over. Mowgli returns to the jungle, reunited with his wolf family, Bagheera, Baloo, his friends. But Arthur has an even greater trial waiting for them, one far more terrifying than the tiger's personal revenge. A disturbing message arrives from the southern jungle that halls, the Red Dogs are coming. To a modern reader, they may not sound as frightening as a tiger, but in Kipling's world, trolls are among the deadliest forces in the jungle. They hunt in enormous packs, fear almost nothing, and sweep away everything in their path. Where the Red Dogs pass, they leave behind only death and empty forest. The first warning comes from a lone wolf named Sam. He barely survives an encounter with the trolls and is left terribly wounded. Sang warns Mowgli that the Red Dogs slaughter everything they encounter and will soon reach the wolves. Mowgli has no choice. This is no longer his personal war. If the trolls are not stopped, the entire wolf pack will be wiped out. The odds are overwhelming. The Red Dogs vastly outnumber the wolves. Even the pack's most experienced warriors know they have almost no chance in an open fight. So Mowgli comes with a plan. He remembers the wild bees whose enormous hives hang above the Waingunga gorge. Even the strongest animals avoid them. Mowgli gets a wild garlic, rubs it all over his body, knowing the beast dislikes its scent, then deliberately provokes the holes and lures them into chasing him. At the very last second, he leaps across the gorge. The holes charge after him. Instead, they crash straight into the swarms of furious bees. Instant chaos erupts. Trying to escape the stings, the red dogs leap into the river, but that is exactly what Mowgli intended. The current carries the exhausted animals downstream where the wolves are already waiting. What follows is one of the bloodiest battles in the entire book. Kipling does not romanticize this fight. This is not a glorious victory. The wolves fall one after another. Many of the pack's older warriors give their lives. Even victory comes at a terrible cost. But thanks to Mowgli's plan and the courage of the wolves, the pack survives. When the battle is over, one thing is painfully clear: the jungle will never be the same again. Too many have died, too much has changed. Mowgli has once again saved the family he loves, but it is after this war that he finally begins to understand what Bagheera had to been telling him ever since he was a child. He is a man, not a wolf, not a panther, not a bear. No matter how deeply he loves the jungle, one day he will have to make choice, and it will be the hardest choice of his life. The ending. Why Mowgli still leaves the jungle. After defeating the Red Dogs, peace finally returns to the jungle. Shere Khan is dead, the trolls have been destroyed, the wolf pack has been saved. It seems that Mowgli can finally stay forever in the place where he grew up, surrounded by those he has always called his family. But this is where Kipling's delivered the biggest twist in the entire story. The central conflict of the book was never just about fighting Shere Khan or defeating uh, other enemies. Throughout the story, Mowgli has been fighting for more than his life. He has been trying to discover who he truly is. Ever since he was a child, Bagheera repeated the same words to him: "Remember, little brother, you are a man." When Mowgli was young, those words meant very little to him, but with every passing year, it became more and more obvious that he was different from the animals around him. He could live by the law of the jungle, he could speak the language of the beasts and earn their respect, but he could never truly become one of them. After the boy gains that holds, the realization becomes impossible to ignore. Mowgli understands that this childhood is over. The wolves are growing old, the jungle itself is changing, and he no longer sees the world through the eyes of a child. Author shows that growing up is about far more than physical change. It's the moment where a person must accept their place in life, even if that choice comes with heartbreak. Mowgli meets Mesua once again, the woman who once welcomed him as her own son. This time he no longer feels like a stranger among people. The years since his exile have changed him. He has learned to understand not only the language of animals, but the emotions of human beings as well. Gradually, Mowgli realizes that his future belongs with people. The hardest part is saying goodbye to the jungle. He says farewell to Baloo, who taught him in the law, to Bagheera, who always protected him and was the first to see not a wolf, but a man, to Grey Brother and the rest of the wolves beside whom he spent his entire childhood. This is not a joyful departure, nor is it an escape. Mowgli leaves the jungle because he understands that no one can spend a lifetime living between two walls. Eventually, a choice has to be made, and it chooses the world of humans. For many readers, this ending comes as a surprise. After all of these victories, it feels as though the hero should remain in the jungle forever, but Kipling deliberately ends the story differently. Defeating his enemies turned out to be easier than accepting himself. That is the true meaning of Mowgli's journey. He didn't reject the jungle. He didn't betray his friends. He didn't forget the law. He simply realized that a person cannot escape their own nature. The final chapters leave the reader with emotions that are both uplifting and deeply bittersweet. Mowgli finally finds himself, but the price of the discovery is saying goodbye to those he loved most. Perhaps that is why Mowgli's stories has remained timeless for well over a century. It's not simply a tale about a boy raised by wolves. It's a story about growing up, making difficult choices, loyalty, responsibility, and finding your place in the world. It reminds us that home is not always the place where we were raised. Sometimes home is the place where we finally understand who we truly are. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to leave a like, tell me in the comments which book you'd like me to cover next, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching Rubber Books. See you.